people in? Folks, welcome to the December webinar meeting of the Bergen Passaic chapter of the Native Plant Society of New Jersey. I'm Elaine Silverstein, one of the co-leaders of the chapter. The other co-leaders are all here, although we're not all in the same part of the country. We're all here tonight. Joanne, Melissa, and Tom are all here. And I just want to remind you, first of all, to put your questions in the Q&A section as the speaker is speaking. Couple of quick reminders, and then we'll get started. Wanted to remind you about our January. We have a really good slate of programming, both us and the statewide group, through the winter. So January 10th, we have one of our winter webinars, and this will be about the plants of DeCourt Park with naturalist Mike Lefevre. On January 17th, there is a statewide webinar called Wild Plant Culture, Restoring Native Edible and Medicinal Plant Communities with Jared Rosenbaum of Wild Ridge Plants. So that should be a terrific talk. He just published a book about this. Saturday, February 24th, we're going to have a winter walk for our chapter with Mike again, and that will be at the Celery Farm, which if you're not familiar with it, it's a very, very interesting site here in Bergen County. March 2nd is the NPSNJ annual meeting. The program will be an all-day affair. They're always terrific speakers, and it will be live and via Zoom. You'll have to register for that. Registration links will probably be available about a month before. And on March 13th, we will have our last Zoom, because we'll go back to live programming in April. Our last Zoom will be, of course, Dr. Randy Eckel, because we have not heard from her yet this winter, and we always have to hear from Randy. And she'll be doing a program called Landscaping with Colorful Native Plants, Beautiful Plants for Beautiful Places. So lots of stuff going on. Please check back to the website. If you pay your dues yearly at the end of the year, they're going to be due soon. And please join the Native Plant Society. We know all our programming is free, but we would love it if you would join the Native Plant Society. So tonight's talk, presented by Kristina Necovska, will survey the plant communities native to New Jersey, both the common ones and the ones that are unique to our state. I love Kristina's subtitle here, Natural Gardens of the Garden State. We actually have really extremely diverse habitats in New Jersey. We have very interesting geology, which leads to interesting habitats. And this is the topic she's going to talk about is extremely interesting to me, because plant communities are really what we should all be aiming for, rather than just planting pretty native plants. I mean, that's good too, but it's great if we can all aim for plant communities. Kristina is a cartographer and a field botanist. I ran into her quite by accident, because I had designed a garden for Ridgewood Water Headquarters in Ridgewood, and it turns out she works there. So when I came to look at the garden, suddenly there was this person who knew all about native plants when I was and was able to know what was going on in this garden and recognize the plants as they came up and everything, because there wasn't when we planted it. So that was very exciting. And I quickly asked her about her background and found out that she was a field botanist, and immediately asked her to do a talk. So here we are, and I'm going to turn it over to her. A reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A. If Kristina mentions some links, we will put them in the chat for you, so you can just copy and paste them. And with no further ado, Kristina, please go. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you so much. Like you said, it was a happy accident. So I have been looking at plants for my entire life, pretty much. And the more I look at them, the more variety I see. And the more variety I see, the more curious I become. And combined with the fact that I love to learn, I was naturally drawn towards botany. So this opening slide, you can see I'm out in a hummocky wetland with my friend Shannon, and in Sussex County, and holding the camera is another good friend of mine, my botany ride or die Bonnie. So I'm going to open this talk and just ask you all to close your eyes. Take a little break. You've earned it. You've waited long enough, right? Imagine you're outside. Imagine you're outside in a place you enjoy being. If this place is enjoyable, there's no people in it, right? If you're outside, there must be plants, and you must have a favorite kind of plant, I'm sure. What are the characteristics of this place you're imagining? Is it a meadow? Can you see flowers? Can you smell anything? Is there pine resin in the air? Is there water nearby? Is it sunny? Is it dry? Is it a cedar bog? Are you being eaten alive by horseflies at a fen? Every location has a context and every place has a history. These places we love, they are just as unique as people. And New Jersey is one of the most densely populated places in the nation. I know I don't need to tell you that in the Bergen-Passaic chapter, you know, yet we have an incredible biodiversity just within arm's reach. There are so many different kinds of places with unique characteristics. How do we know which are at risk of disappearing forever? The goal of my presentation is simple. I'll present to you in an understandable way a national standard mechanism for ecological classification, and then give you some tools you can use to make sense of this information. In addition, I'll highlight some places I love in the process, the thinking being that if plant communities can be categorized in a systematic way, they can be assigned values based on measurable data. And with this data, they can be assigned conservation priorities. These values represent how sensitive a place is to disturbance, how rare or how much it resembles pre-European settlement. And one specific document I will just mention, I will discuss, is authored by members of the New Jersey DEP Office of Natural Lands Management. It provides a breakdown of the communities and ecosystems within the state of New Jersey, and this is what informs the state level decision making. And my thinking is that you can use this tool and you can use its logic to better understand any natural system that you find yourself to be in. So, okay, first of all, before we get into that, I will talk about plant habitats in a general way. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with plant habitats, but I'll give you an overview. So keep this in mind as we discuss the classification scheme. On your left, you can see in this flow chart or choose your own adventure game, you can ask yourself how much moisture is in the soil. So we have xeric, mesic, and hydric soils. And then if you take a step to the right, we're looking at site condition with respect to the water flow. So is it super dry or is it regularly flooded? And it runs the gamut here. Take another step to the right and you get into the habitats themselves. And just at a glance, I'm sure you can see that hydric systems and wetlands are fairly complex. So honestly, that is a presentation topic of its own. And what I would like to discuss a little bit more are these drier habitats, and hopefully I can touch on that later on. Yeah, so okay, we can move on. So let's go forward. So in a broad scope, these are, you don't need to remember any of these, but these are just the kinds of habitats in a broad way that we see. We have a ridge system with their own habitats. We have uplands, and uplands occur all throughout the state. There's north and south varieties that are more common depending on where you are in the state. We have freshwater wetlands, again, all throughout the state, except for like the southern fens, the pine savannas that only occur in the pine barrens. We have pine barrens, of course, and coastal salt marshes and coastal dune habitats. This is just a little bit of a flavor, and we can go on. So this is New Jersey, and these are the physiographic regions of the state. Basically, the way you can think about this, if you're not familiar, is that these 4 sections, and you can break them down even more, but they represent basically elevation of New Jersey. And from the purple area in the Ridge and Valley, it's the highest elevation. And as you step down southward, elevation decreases until you go past the fall line between the green and the yellow sections into the coastal plain. And it's just a descending slope of elevation. So in purple in the Ridge and Valley, you have partially glaciated ecoregion. Here you have a lot of metamorphic bedrock and limestone and dolomite valley. This is where you have your karst landscapes with sinkholes, you have calcareous fens, you have swamps, you have glacial lakes, especially in Kittatinny Valley. Blue is the highlands. It's a partially glaciated on metamorphic bedrock. You have forested hills, you have lakes again, and you're descending down. And now you're having more nice valleys, nice as in the geologic nice. They're also very nice, and limestone and shale. So in green is the Piedmont. This is really the most populated part of the state. You have rolling hills and valleys. It's generally flatter. You have more wetland complexes here. You have a lot of agriculture. Much of this area was completely cleared of its vegetation. So you have a lot of successional second growth forests, I mean, all throughout the state, but especially here. And of note and interesting is that you also have a mountain ridge, the Watchung Mountains, running up through the Palisades and down through Somerset County before you enter down into the coastal plain. So not shown on this map, we have the intercoastal plain, which is its own region. It hugs the Delaware River on the western side, past the fall line, and you have basically gravelly soil, sand, and silt from deposits from Delaware Bay. Much of this area becomes seasonally flooded, so you have a lot of tidal marshes and swamps, floodplain forests, and seasonal ponds. And then much of the rest of the region is the coastal plain. Xeric sand, you have an extensive pine oak woodland and pine barrens. This is, again, where a lot of our biodiversity is located. It's in pine barrens, it's in the Ridge and Valley, it's like a north-south divide. And this, what you see here, this is an overlay of the impervious surface of New Jersey. So as you can see, I put this in just to make an emphasis of much of this has been completely flat topped. So the parts where you see color is really what we have left and what we're talking about preserving biodiversity. So this is the document that I will be referring to in the course of this this presentation. It's called The Classification of Vegetation Communities of New Jersey, the second edition. And in the bottom text that you see there is the way that this document breaks down our plant communities. So they're broken down by the dominant plant, which in this image and text is pitch pine, Pinus rigida, and its associates, blackjack oak and broom crowberry, Quercus marylandica, Carema conradii. So there is also rankings given at this level. The rankings are assigned from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the most imperiled, 5 being secure. The letters S and G are used to designate state and global level. So this classification system is part of a national classification system that allows ecologists and biologists to compare ecosystems. So we have like a global comparison. So for example, this is a South Jersey oddity known as the Pygmy Pine Plains, and it's a wide area where the pitch pines are dwarfed. This is due to unique environmental conditions such as the genetics of the pitch pine themselves, the fire regime, the poor soil, And I put in these top two inset images, the blackjack oak, Quercus marylandica, and then the bottom two, you have the broom crowberry. These are diagnostic of this particular type of plant community. And it's interesting to note that it's given a G2 status because there are other communities like this on the East Coast. One such community is found in Ulster County, New York. However, that one is unique in that although there are many similar plant species there, it occurs on a mountain summit, whereas this one is on the coastal plain. So it's still unique in New Jersey, although there are similar ones that occur throughout the country. I also, an additional note, the broom crowberry is a protected plant in New Jersey. It's in the Ericaceae family. This represents the most southern extent of its range in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. It's found along the Atlantic coast in New York, Massachusetts, Maine, Quebec, and further north up into Nova Scotia. It has experienced declines, although it is tolerant of rather harsh conditions. It's the usual culprits: human disturbance, habitat loss, etc. So a little bit on how this system was developed. This second edition is built upon earlier work by Thomas Braden. Thomas Braden was the former administrator of the Office of Natural Lands Management and the executive director of the New Jersey Natural Lands Trust, which is a independent state agency that's focused on preserving land and conservation easements for rare plants in the state. In the late 90s, the National Vegetation Classification was developed as a joint effort by the Nature Conservancy and the Association for Biodiversity Information, as well as natural heritage programs across the country. And so what this does is it allows a comparison between states. And to the left here, we have two characteristic plants of New Jersey. In the foreground, there is the rose begonia, famous Pine Barrens orchid that's found throughout the southern part of the state. And in the background, this is now considered a New Jersey endemic species called bog asphodel, Narcissus americanum. These plants are extremely sensitive to any changes in the hydrologic regime. It was found previously in Delaware and in North Carolina, and they are now extirpated from both of those states. So it's only found in New Jersey. This classification system calls this the Pine Barren Streamside Bog Asphodel Savanna. This plant is a diagnostic feature of this type of system. Oops. So why is this system developed? Well, it's simple, really. Inventory and conserve New Jersey's biodiversity, identify areas critical for conservation. We have considerations like capacity. Who has the time and money to inventory literally thousands of species? I don't, but I wish I did. So there you have to have a system in order to prioritize conservation, unfortunately, or fortunately. I mean, it's good we have this. So with time, we find more and more communities. At the outset, we only had 54 communities identified. This document that I referred to has 139 communities, and 2 years ago, the data was provided to natureserve.org, and we are up to 258 plant communities in New Jersey. And I mentioned NatureServe, and this is just something that happened last week. So this person you see on the left here, this is biologist at NatureServe, Amanda Eberly. And just last week, they described a new species of beak rush called the Mid-Atlantic beak rush. It was documented in New Jersey, and here she is at the type locality with the plant in her hand. This is an example of, so you have Rhynchospora mesoatlantica. This is the beak rush that was just discovered on the right. And in comparison to other closely related species, they surveyed 12 locations in Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. And of those 12 locations, it was found to only exist in 6 of them. This is since the 90s. So, you know, through the last 30 years, this plant has declined. And often it's the case that new species are discovered, they're immediately placed under review for endangered status because of developmental pressure, because of rarities. This was a joint effort between NatureServe and New York Botanical Garden. The other author on this study was Robert Nachi. Not sure I'm pronouncing his name right, but this is, you know, what is known to happen, and I thought it was interesting to highlight that. Okay, so now we can get into the classification system. So it follows a coarse to fine scale. You have the top 6 levels are based on the physiognomy of the area. So what this means is that they can be defined by a person who has no specialized training. They represent observational characteristics of the habitats you see. You look at the structure of the dominant plant species, its height, its spacing, its growth form, leaf characters, etc. And then at the bottom 2 levels, you have the floristic levels, which are done through ground surveys, through review of literature. This is the very detailed part of it. And I will just walk through the levels. So at the system level, we have aquatic, terrestrial, and subterranean. That's pretty self-explanatory. The subterranean actually is used mainly for fauna. So really what we're looking at is aquatic and terrestrial systems. The next level, the class level, is your next largest level. It's determined by the height and density of your dominant life form. And we can look at that in a little bit more in detail. So these are our classes: forest, woodlands, shrubland, dwarf shrubland, herbaceous, non-vascular, and sparse vegetation. A forest is defined as dominated by trees with where the individuals are, the crowns are touching. You have overlap between individuals in the system. And the coverage area considered, you have 60 to 100% is the dominant plant. So if you have a bunch of trees, you're in a forest, basically. It's my layman's way of putting it. This image is at Washington Valley Park in Bridgewater, in Somerset County, by the way. Next up is a woodland. So woodland, similar to a forest, except you have a lot of space in between the dominant plant type, which again is a tree. This is a pitch pine woodland in Wharton State Forest. This is not my photo, but a lot of our woodlands are in South Jersey, where you have more open areas and more naturalistic open areas in the pine barrens. Next, you have a shrubland. A shrubland is dominated by shrubs, which are over ½ meter tall. You have an overlap between individuals. And in the image here is the pygmy pine plains is classified as a shrubland because these, although there are trees, they are very short. And next up, we have a dwarf shrubland. So if those were over ½ meter, these are under ½ meter height. Individuals can be close or far. This is not like the best image. I took this at Sandy Hook. What this is attempting to show is that there is a dwarf shrubland there. It's the beech heather community, and these plants are very small and they occur in between the dunes of this kind of system. And you see this kind of class of communities in the interdunes along the barrier islands in the state. Okay, next, herbaceous. So these are grasslands. This is anything that's not a plant, pretty much. It can be dominated by grasses. It could be dominated by ferns. You have, as long as the coverage area is more than 25%, if there are trees or other plants present, they comprise less than 25% coverage. And this is a dune community. This is a dune grass community at Island Beach State Park. And as you can see, the trees are off in the distance and you have the dune grass in the foreground. This is interesting. So you have a non-vascular community. So these are comprised by bryophytes, moss, lichen, liverworts, algae. If there are no taller plants in the area, these are the dominant plant type. So you see this occurring in deserts and subarctic environments, alpine summits, or if it's in an aquatic system in kelp beds, rocky shorelines, or there's something called a pioneer lichen system. And this is what you're seeing here, actually. This is called the Central Appalachian Acidic Boulder Field. This one is in Sussex County along the Appalachian Trail. Unfortunately, I don't have a macro shot. You know, you might say that I can't see the forest for the trees or the boulder field for the lichen, but this individual you see here is a characteristic diagnostic plant. It's the common toadskin lichen, and that is a diagnostic plant of this kind of system in North Jersey. We have one other type of, and that is, to my knowledge, not found anywhere else in the country. It's the calcareous sinkhole pondwort community, found in the Ridge and Valley area, and it's an aquatic system. They're found at the bottom of these calcareous sinkhole ponds. Very interesting. Finally, we have sparse vegetation. So this is not dominated by a plant. It's actually defined by the abiotic substrate. So as you can see, this is a American sea rocket. It's found on the beaches. It's called a sparse beach vegetation, and this is because these plants cannot survive that close. There's no other plant that can survive that close to such harsh conditions to the Atlantic Ocean. So you do have these little tiny communities that occur along the seashore. So moving on, subclass is defined by the leaf phenology of the dominant plant type. So what this means is you're looking, if it's a woody class, you're going to say, is it evergreen, deciduous, or mixed? Or if it's herbaceous system, you're going to say, is it perennial or annual? Or you look at the particle size of the substrate. Is it gravel or sand-based? Subclass, it's fairly straightforward. Groupings are defined by leaf characteristics. So then you go further down. You say, you look at the leaves. Are they broadleaf? Are they needle leaf? Microphyllus is used in mosses, I believe. And the subgroup. The subgroup represents a distinction between natural and cultural vegetation. So is it cultivated? For the purpose of the state, at the state level, they only look at natural systems, but we do have cultural systems. We have pine plantations in the south of the state. So that is listed on NatureServe if you're interested. The formation group defines plants that share specific physiognomy and broad environmental factors. What this means is basically if it's for example, in a wetland system, you will say if it's inundated, it's a flooded system. If it's freshwater, if it's brackish, wet meadow. These are used to define environmental factors or physiognomy, such as subpolar grassland or a cold deciduous forest. And that covers like the general portion. The alliance level looks at the species composition. Now you have people going out and doing ground surveys. You have to look at the species level composition if you're going to be looking at succession pattern or disturbance. Disturbance happens at the local level. You have to see what's happening at the plants. It kind of follows. It makes sense. So an alliance can share one or more diagnostic species across like different systems across the state. But really it's just defined as like one type of system. So you'll have something like Pinus rigida Acer rubrum forest alliance. You're looking at two basic compositional plants. And then when you go down to the plant association level, you will basically just throw in more plants. That's kind of how it works. It names the dominant diagnostic species, and then the plant association, plant community, looks at more defined levels. You add more definition at that level. And we have a definition here. It makes up a definite floristic composition presenting a uniform physiognomy and growing in uniform habitat conditions. I think that's pretty funny because this is like best case scenario. It doesn't really happen like that. You have gradations in reality, but you try to fit these systems into comparable features, I guess. So if you aim for the moon, you land amongst the stars. You try to aim for something like that. And, this is the level that the state uses to define rankings. And this is where rankings are given. So I'll give you an example. This is, we're looking at like a maritime forest. So it's a terrestrial system, it's a forest system, it's an evergreen forest system, and then going further down, maritime evergreen forest. Natural. And this particular evergreen forest is formed on the lee side, like the bay side of the back dunes. It's the specific alliance is called the American Holly Forest Alliance. And then the specific one that occurs in New Jersey, it only occurs in one location in Sandy Hook. It's called the American Holly Northern Bayberry Forest. And we can look at that one in detail. So I have some images here just to illustrate. I don't know about any of you, but I live very close to Sandy Hook, so I go there frequently. If you've ever been there in the fall, you'll notice that the majority of the characteristic species you find there are heavy fruit and berry producers. Sandy Hook is a major North American bird migratory stopover destination, and the plant composition is the primary reason for this. You have here American holly, and here's the other associate, northern bayberry. There's some more characteristic species. You have black cherry, Prunus serratina. You have beach plum, Prunus maritima. You have heavily represented by shrubs and vines. So in the background of this image, that's all poison ivy. That is, it grows like a shrub there. And then in the foreground, you have common milkweed. You have sumacs. This is shining sumac. You have Baccharis halimifolia. This one is a groundsel tree. It occurs on other locations on the dune. Oh, and I should point out on the right here, those dark areas, those dark green areas, that is where this forest is located. But you have other communities which occur on the spit. So in between these dunes and in the lighter kind of beige area, you have your beech heather community, which is the plant you see here. You have this is beech wormwood and Virginia creeper, and you can see there's berries. Like everything produces a fruit or a berry. It's quite interesting if you're there at that time of year and you observe it. Other dominant plant types that you see often is red cedar. You see hackberry, sassafras. Let's see, what else do we have? We have grapes, many kinds of grapes, and they occur. You have this is moonseed. Also, you see this. This is a salt pan community on the bay side. So in areas where the salt water inundates the low-lying areas, you have formations, you have basic ponds, saltwater ponds, and they have their own unique vegetation. This is what it looks like. You see in the back red cedar, and you have plants like sea lavender and glasswort, salicornia. Let's see. I think those are all the photos that I have for this particular location. this is just what I mentioned. These are just some of the common plant types of this location. I didn't mention some other herb layers, like you have bonesets, you have mayflowers, milkweeds, wormwood. You have camphorweed, evening primrose, you have rose species. It's very prolific, like I mentioned, fruit and berry. Next up, I wanted to talk about the dry community types, the ridge communities. So on the right, you see geographic formations in the northern part of the state. These occur on ridges at the high elevations where runoff is quick to escape downhill or to the atmosphere because the soil is thin, it does not retain moisture. You have open canopies at the summit, and the formations represented in these areas are chestnut oak forests. You have pitch pine, scrub oak. This is, I believe, only found at High Point State Park at the highest elevation on the Appalachian ridges. And then you have our friend, the Central Appalachian acidic boulder field with their lichens also occurs there. Dominant trees are chestnut oak and red oak. And let's see, let's go forward. A subset of this kind of community that I am very familiar with occurs along the basalt and diabase underlain bedrock regions of northern New Jersey. So in the Ridge and Valley, you have gneiss and granite, you have sandstone, and these types of communities, but they also have their own unique character. There's a distinction between what we call the mafic formations, which is the basalt and the diabase that's located in the Piedmont. They contain high qualities of mineral deposits like iron and magnesium that make the summits inhospitable chemically and physically to a lot of plants. So the specific nature of these types of ridges allowed specialist plants to take hold that are pretty unique in their own right. What you're seeing here is this is called trap rock basalt. This is at the Watchung Reservation, and you see these communities along the ridges. So you see it at Washington Valley Park, you see at Cushitunk in Hunterdon County, like I mentioned in Union County, the Watchung Reservation. You have South Mountain Reservation in Essex County and up through High Mountain Preserve, Passaic County. And also is the Palisades are represented in this formation as well. So in the ridges, you have more of an open grass dominated community. It's common plants are chestnut oak, and you see them occurring as well as other oak species. Here's a chestnut oak. That's what the leaf looks like, and I have the underside leaf as a diagnostic species. See, let's go forward. So these areas, because they are rather harsh and acidic, you have a lot of ericaceous shrubs forming the underlayers. So you have, this is pinkster flower, rhododendron, periclymenoides. As a result of harsh nature of the environment, you have these plants that can make a living there. So this is a blueberry, Vaccinium pallidum, the Blue Ridge blueberry, but you have huckleberries as well. It's very similar plants. You have Palmia latifolia. This is mountain laurel. You see this as you descend up the elevation of the ridges. And at the summit, you have very charismatic herbaceous layer. So this is Ionactis linearifolia. This is the flax-leaf aster. You see these along the sunny open ridges. This is a recently described aster. It was recently split, I should say, from the smooth aster. This is Symphyotrichum consinum. The Michaelmas daisy. It occurs at these high elevations, and it occurs in these mafic conditions. So where the other smooth aster occurs like throughout the state, this particular aster is only found in these types of regions in New Jersey. You have bone sets. This is on the left, this is tall bone set, Eupatorium altissimum, and did I say the left? On the right is the Eupatorium sicilifolium, the upland bone set. I particularly love plants in the Asteraceae family, so I like to look at them when I go hiking. You have a lot of mints that occur here. You have a lot of mountain mints. This is the white leaf mountain mint. And then you have other plants like this one is called rock harlequin on the left. It is the Cacnoides sempervirens. It only occurs in these types of regions in New Jersey. I'm not sure if it has a threatened status. I would imagine it does, since it's fairly uncommon. And let's see. Okay, that was it for those photos. So like I mentioned, I wanted to give some resources you can use. So I mentioned earlier in the talk, NatureServe. NatureServe is essentially a partner organization with many natural heritage programs across the country. It provides a database that gives rankings for ecosystems and communities, as well as individual species. I use this heavily. Currently, NatureServe collects data on biodiversity statistics. So they have information for over 100,000 species and ecosystems. If you don't know this, you can go to NatureServe Explorer, and you can search by species or ecosystem, as you see here, and it will provide a lot of information. It's a good website. The other one is a really good one to look at for plant communities. It's called bplant. This is really focused on mid-Atlantic states, and they have great range maps. So you can click, it's like interactive. You can click on these and get descriptions for plants that occur there, as well as ecosystem descriptions. And the last one I have here is the Mid-Atlantic Herbaria Consortium. This is my Bible, basically. This is an online herbaria for New Jersey. The majority of our herbarium specimens are housed at the Chrysler Herbarium at Rutgers. And this is an amazing resource for anyone who wants to learn to identify plants by their structures. But you can also use it to get an understanding of the current and historic distribution of plants in the state. So if you click on Mid-Atlantic Herbaria, you can search by your state, your county, down to your locality, and you can pull information for everything that was collected dating back to the late 1800s. It's a really, really good resource that I can't recommend enough for anybody who's interested in learning plant structures. And I was fortunate enough to have some of my vouchers accepted into the herbarium, which a couple years ago I would never have, I don't know, I never would have thought that I could contribute, but you know, if you set your mind to it, you can do it. So I believe that's it. These are the works I cited, and I can provide any more information if anybody wants. And that's all, folks. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. That's it.
I'm here. I'm turning my video on. Hi. Okay, I'm back. We have some questions. Melissa is putting those links in the chat right now, so that everybody can copy and paste the ones that you just gave. I believe she's put them all in. And the document, the classification of vegetation communities of New Jersey, second
Yes.
iteration. If you Google that title, Melissa will probably put it up. Is it right here?
Yes,
We'll get it. Yeah, there it is.
Yes, it's available on the Rutgers Rutgers Library Research Repository, I
I
believe.
put the title into Google
Mhm.
search. And again, to repeat it, it's Classification of Vegetation Communities of New Jersey, second
Yes,
iteration. If you put that into
yes.
Google search, you'll get the PDF.
And I will also mention the information that's in that document is also available on NatureServe Explorer. You can but what this is really specific for New Jersey. So they do have the listings for the state. We have more information in our state document, obviously. So you have both resources available.
So we have a few questions. So first of all, somebody would like to know the difference between a bog and a fen. I know you were I know wetlands are really interesting, and for good reason. You stuck to the dry communities because we do tend to talk
Uh,
about wetlands more.
yeah, so
But somebody would like to know that, which I think is
sure.
a really good
So the
question.
difference between a bog and a fen generally has to do with the hydrologic system. Fens typically are fed, I hope I'm getting this right. Fens are fed by groundwater, and whereas bogs are generally surface water, I want to say. And it also the difference between the two has to do with the nutrient levels. So bogs have very little nutrients and they have very poor soil. There's not really soil there. So they're dominated by carnivorous plants. So it's plants that take advantage of the really poor conditions. Um, I think that's all I can remember right now. But that's generally the difference, although you do have overlap. You have characteristic plants in both types of systems. Yeah.
There's a lot to remember when you study botany.
Yeah, there is a
There's
ton to remember.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, so
Couple more questions. Yeah,
mhm.
somebody was wondering because you were talking about the chestnut oak, which are in the red oak group. Somebody was asking if there are areas where white oaks are dominant. If you know offhand about areas where
Yeah,
white.
so white oaks will be common in like a floodplain, like a swamp kind of environment, and like a forested wetland. You also see them dominant in a mixed oak upland forest. So in the Piedmont region, they're really found all throughout. And something interesting about mixed oak forest is that long ago they used to be referred to as uh, American chestnut oak forests. And as you may know, the American chestnut is um, essentially no more, although there are like living individuals that keep coming back up, but you don't have like the tall plants that you had before the blight. So yeah, so they're more common in like a mesic environment, I would say.
Somebody is asking for the link to the Mid-Atlantic Herbarium, but I believe it's in the chat.
Yeah,
Believe
I
that
will put it
is
back on
now
that
in the chat.
slide.
Um,
Yeah, so let's go back. Here we go. It's
It
Mid-Atlantic
is, it's in the
Herbaria.
chat. No,
Okay,
it's in the chat. You don't have to spell it out. So,
got it.
yeah, folks, Melissa has put all of the links that you were referring to into the chat. Thank you very much, Melissa. And, so I think if you refer to that and, are there any more questions for Kristina? This was a very, very interesting talk. I always like to hear about the Pinelands, the communities of the Pinelands, and the Sandy Hook one was fascinating. And I would like to know, I've been to Sandy Hook, like to see the seals, but where would we go to see that community you were talking about? Like, where would we park to walk into
Oh,
it?
I would park more towards the north part of the spit. So if you go up to, so there you have like parking areas A, B, C,
Mhm.
D. If you park up near the campground near L, I believe, like I think that's the Horseshoe Cove, I think. If you go up to where the camping is, there's like a little anywhere near the north side, I think, and then you can walk down the trails in that area. So in the north part of the spit is the place to go, because I know on the south side it's just a really like a beach kind of
Mhm.
recreation. If you go to the north part of Sandy Hook, you can walk through the forest up there.
Okay, it really sounded very interesting because I'm a northern, northern gal. I've always hiked north of, I'm from New York City, and I've always hiked north of here in Harriman and places like that. And I was just astonished the first time I went down to the Pinelands. So I had never seen anything like this. So that community you were talking about sounds really beautiful. So I think,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention actually, see, there's so much information. So Sandy Hook is really the northernmost part of the coastal plain. It's really an interesting place. So it's actually on cemented bedrock. It's not actually on the coastal plain, but you have like the same types of plants that occur further south in New Jersey, but they're more accessible. Obviously, if you live in the north, you can just go down to Sandy Hook and kind of get a feel for what the plant communities are like further down in the state.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Somebody said the chat has disappeared, but it's still there. I'm looking at all the all of the links are still there. I can see them. So I hope that you can that everybody else can too. And thank you very much, Kristina. This was fascinating. And
Thank you.
I think we're going to, there's no more questions. So I think we're going to end. We hope to see you all next month. In the meantime, everybody keep in touch. It's good to hear from you. Tanya mentioned, hang on one second. Tanya just mentioned that I can't find it anymore, that if you park near the bird watching platform.
Yes, that's exactly, yeah, there is like a boardwalk that goes across to the bayside. If there's an area for parking there, yeah, you can go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Kristina. Bye-bye. I'm gonna end, I think I end the meeting.